And Chris, I'll yield the floor to you.
All right, thanks so much, Tasha, and thanks everybody for joining us. Yeah, it looks like we've got Malaya here. Am I pronouncing that right? Malaya? No. Uh-oh. How do I pronounce your name? I don't want to mess it up. It's small enough now we can get to know everybody. I like that.
Malia.
Malia, thank you. We got Malia, we got Sherry. I see Tiffany, Scott. I think I'm pronouncing that right. Oh, we just got Alma joining us. Welcome, welcome. And I see Trio. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly. But anyway,
Student
one of
support
the
services. Yeah.
Oh, support services. That's cool. Good to know. So one of the features that we have enabled by default is what's called focus mode. I know that for some of us, having a whole bunch of cameras being loaded into our Zoom screen can take up a lot of bandwidth. And so what we've done is we enabled this focus mode, which means that the hosts can see you and you can see the hosts, but none of you would be able to see each other until I bring you up here onto my webcam. So we still will get a chance to interact with each other, but it means that you don't have to worry about processing a whole lot of bandwidth by taking in a bunch of videos onto your screen. Anyway, for those that don't know me, my name is Chris Gilbert. I teach speech and communication with the Language Arts Division at Leeward Community College. I've been teaching since 2012, and it's been a lot of fun. I want to make sure that before we dive in today that you all feel like you have a front row seat. I want you to feel like this is not just kind of a lecture for you to watch, it's also something for you to engage in. And so what I'm going to ask you to do is go ahead and type in chat and let us know, let's see, where you're tuning in from. You can say hi from IAEA, hi from Pearl City. Where is everybody coming in from? One of the cool things about the online circumstances we got here is we can be all over the place. We can be tuning in. Tiffany from Pearl City, right on. Thanks for joining us there, Tiffany. That's pretty close to me. I'm over in IAEA right now. I'm pretty close to the stadium. Hello, Scott's in Kaneohe. Welcome there. Good to see you there, Scott. Oh yeah, I see the little Windward logo too on your camera. Very cool. So if you don't see Scott at home, it's because of focus mode. It means that we can all see each other, hosts and guests. Let's see. Malia is saying hi from Waianae. Welcome. Cool. We've got, let's see, Sherry's tuning in from Waipahu. Right on. Welcome, everybody. So it's good to see you here. I know there's a lot of places that we could be, a lot of things that we could be doing. I want to make sure that this workshop is worth your time. When people hear about my background and subject matter, they think of speech and communication. They often think of public speaking, giving presentations. And that's far and away like the most common association, but there's a lot of skills in communication, things like nonverbal, reading body language, or having healthy relationships, stuff like that. And there's also kind of this hidden sub-genre of communication called intrapersonal communication. Intrapersonal communication is the kind of communication we have with ourselves. We have a kind of self-talk. And this self-talk is going on all the time, whether we are aware of it or not, whether we're intentional with our self-talk or not. And so this workshop is designed to kind of shine a spotlight on some of that default self-talk that's going on all the time, the intrapersonal communication that we have with ourselves. I know it sounds a little bit floofy to think about talking with ourselves. We think, well, that's just thinking. I think kind of a good example of this that made it click for me is, for those of you that are really studious about taking notes in your classes, who are you writing the notes to? Well, in a way, you're writing those notes to future you, who is kind of a different person. Future you knows different things, has had different life experiences, and you're guessing that future you can benefit from what present you has to say. So that's one way that we kind of communicate intrapersonally, but we do it in real time too, not just by taking notes. So self-talk for success is about first spotting the things that are going on by default and then slightly changing them. So I want to make sure that everyone feels like they got a front row seat. One way that we can do that is by jumping into chat. So thank you everybody for jumping into chat. Another way we can do that is through the microphone. Now the first half of today's workshop is going to be kind of me sharing some things with you, but the last half of today is going to be very, very interactive. And I really want you to feel like we're not leaving you behind. So just to test out our gear to make sure it's all working okay, we're going to try a Zoom no-no. And the Zoom no-no has to do with our microphones. In the bottom left-hand corner of your screen, you can see a little microphone button. By default, you should all be muted right now. I'm going to count backwards from 3 to 1. When I hit 1, I'm going to ask all of us at the same time to unmute our microphones and to say, hi, everybody, just to make sure that we know we have access to our microphones. Ready? 3, 2, 1.
Hi, everybody.
Hi, everybody.
Hi, everybody.
Perfect. Hi. Wonderfully done. And a nice little harmony, too. There were a couple of us that kind of harmonized. So we have the chat. We've got the microphones. Another way that you can feel like you've got a front row seat is going to be through the The camera feature, of course. Yeah, so the little focus mode thing is designed to help you save some bandwidth on your end there, just in case that might be tricky for us. But I don't want you to feel like you're in this all by yourself. We can kind of give little waves and things like this. So, whoops, sorry, that's the wrong button. I didn't mean to make you the front and center there, Malia. So what I'm going to ask us to do is in the bottom left-hand corner is to go ahead and click the camera icon to turn off our cameras. And you'll notice that when you do that, your microphone would still work. So right now you shouldn't see me, but you should still be able to hear me sort of podcast style. And now if your camera is off, go ahead and give it a click and you can turn the cameras on, and then that'll bring everybody back to each other, just to make sure we have the ability to do it. Fabulous. And now, just to make sure that you can grab the speaker's attentions, make sure that you get a front row seat with your cameras on, go ahead and 3, 2, 1, give the goofiest Forrest Gumpy wave that you can possibly give. 3, 2, 1. Goofy waves, grabbing our attention, Forrest Gump style. Fabulous. Thanks, Chanel. Thanks, Alma. Thanks, Sherry. Fabulous. That way you know you have a front row seat. I don't want you to feel like this is just kind of an event that happens around you. I want you to feel like you can jump in anytime with questions, with comments, or with tangents. And if you need some time to kind of tinker with your settings, if you have to find like a good Wi-Fi spot or kind of tinker with your headset to make sure the mic works, I'm going to buy you a little bit of time so that the last half of today's workshop, you'll have plenty of opportunity to jump in with us live in real time. All right. So that being said, all of our tech is working. We got a front row seat. We have an idea of what we're doing here with Self-Talk for Success. I'm going to have you imagine that you are an early human being out on the savannas, doing your hunter-gatherer thing. And as you're doing your hunter-gatherer thing, you hear behind you a little rustle in the bushes behind you. I'm not quite sure what that could be, but you hear it, a little ominous. In chat, I ask you, what comes to mind? What could it be? What comes to mind for that stuff? There's no right answer. There's no wrong answer. It's what instinctively comes to mind for you. Whatever made the noise. Chris says, predator could be behind us. Could well be. If that's what comes to mind, sure, you got it. I'm just curious what's instinctive. Malia says, food. Ooh, cool. There's some nice mangoes behind us. Could well be. Could be food. What else comes to mind? The wind? Yeah, it could be the wind, Tiffany says. Right on. Oh, Alma says so too. Of course, we were playing some Earth, Wind, and Fire earlier as well. Got some wind. Okay. So I'm looking for some categories here. And I think I can take the categories of things like predator, food, and wind and stuff, and we can probably put them into 2 big categories. It's fair to say that whatever made the noise behind us is either going to be safe, like the wind, or it's going to be dangerous, like a predator. Some kind of a saber-toothed cat, or maybe it's someone from a rival tribe out to hunter-gather where we are hunter-gathering. Either safe or it's not safe. I think that's probably an exhaustive list of the big categories of things, even if the specific things would be different, right? Could be the wind, could be a little mouse, but safe and not safe. Now, all of us here are descended from those who were in similar circumstances. So imagine for a moment that whatever we assume, we're going to be wrong. Sometimes we're wrong from time to time. If we assume that the noise behind us was dangerous, but we're wrong, and we run back home, what happens to us then? Go ahead in chat, let us know. What's the consequences of being wrong because we thought it was dangerous, but it was actually safe? What's going to happen? You can typey. Or if you like, you can jump on mic if it's a little bit quicker. Chris says arrive home unharmed, right? Tiffany says missing out on something. Sure, whatever it was we were out to hunter-gather, we miss out. We have a little bit of FOMO. Might miss out on a possible meal, Malia says. Yeah, there we go. So there's the something. There's great minds think alike. We even have like similar phrasing here. Maybe a bit at ease, Sherry says. We get home, kind of exhale, take a load off. Nice. Put on Netflix or just stare at the rock wall, whatever the equivalent was. Okay, so whatever the case is, we have maybe a bit of ease. We have some experiences on the other side of being wrong. If we assume it's the wind, something safe, and we're wrong, then what? You can type it. Let me know. What's the consequence then? We thought it was safe, but we were wrong. What's the consequence there? No hay problema. Ooh, danger, all caps. Tiffany is yelling all the way through chat there. All the way from, was it Waipahu, from Pearl City? Could be dead, might die, Scott says. Scared? Yep. If We thought it was safe, but it was actually dangerous, and we just kind of sit around going, whatever, it's fine, but it was actually a saber-toothed cat behind us. Make. We don't get to feel embarrassed the next day, or get to go home and be at ease, or to be sort of, just have more experiences. It's bad news. You and I, we descended from the ones who ran. The stakes for being wrong when we assumed safety were very, very high. The stakes for being wrong when we assumed danger were very, very low. It was okay. You and I still have the exact same hardware. The problem is that in modern day, our stressors and our threats, they aren't things like saber-toothed cats or giant predators lurking in the bushes. Our stressors today are things like exams, or having a tough breakup, or giving a public speech, to give a presentation, or all kinds of things which are genuinely stressful, but different. Tax season, mortgages. But our hardware is prepared for the rustle in the bushes, to assume the danger that may or may not be there. Our brain's good at keeping us safe, not necessarily keeping us happy. So even if there are no predators lurking in the bushes, our brain is designed to assume that they're there and to respond with fight or with flight. This is going to be the primary mechanism that we have to be aware of when we're paying attention to our self-talk. Especially nowadays, as our work lives, as our school lives have started to intermingle with online environments, we start to blur the boundaries between what's work and what's at home. In a way, we're kind of always on duty. This is what Peter Drucker called knowledge work. Knowledge work doesn't really have clear boundaries. If you have to harvest a bunch of tomatoes, how do you know when you're done? When there's no more tomatoes. Easy. If you are preparing a presentation, how do you know when you're done preparing? You can always make it a little bit better. If you're writing an essay, how do you know when you're done? You could always come back and revise this one paragraph. There's always more things to be done. The boundaries of knowledge work are very fuzzy. And now the boundaries between work and school life and home life are very fuzzy, which means that even as we're on the couch at home when we would normally be eating dinner or watching TV, our minds can be gnawing on work things and stressor type things. It's hard to create those kinds of boundaries, and it's hard to turn off that part of our brain that's going, watch out, danger, looking for stressors all the time. That's why our session today, I think, is going to be so valuable for us. Because even if we're pretty good about handling stressors, that takes practice and effort. And if you're like me, and you're maybe not so good at handling stressors, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. I'm going to give you some tools and techniques that you can start using. In particular, I want to give you 3 tangible tricks of your brain to watch out for, and 3 tangible tools that you can start to implement. Tiffany says 100, underline there, emoji. That's right, you have emojis there in chat. I forgot all about that, so feel free to jump in with the emojis. So it's a little bit like our brain has a kind of default setting, like a little meter that's there to help us freak out. Except it's calibrated to be extra high. Our freak-out-o-meter is very finely tuned to be ready to fight or to flight. And these 3 different tricks of our mind are ways that our brain keeps that freak-out-o-meter really high. Here's one of the ways that we can keep that meter really high. It's a little trick of your mind called cognitive ease. Now, cognitive ease on its own isn't necessarily good or bad, but it's worth knowing about. The way that cognitive ease works is whatever our mind processes repeatedly, it starts to process more easily. Kind of like water running down a little groove in the sand. It kind of erodes it a little bit deeper, makes it easier for more water to run down that same path. That's how we get the beautiful mountains that we get driving out to where Scott is, out on the windward side in Kaneohe, right? Because wherever the water goes, it becomes easier to go in the future. It's kind of like that for our thoughts, our habits, our patterns. Think of it like this. You know the game Punch Buggy? Anybody here, show of hand, you can play Punch Buggy? And if you don't have your cameras with us, yeah, Malia has. If you don't have your camera, then you can do like a little reactions button with a little raised hand there, like this, and it shows up. Just make sure that you remember to lower your hand too. A handful of us, well, Tiffany has, right on. So Punch Buggy. If you're not familiar with how to play Punch Buggy, I can introduce you to the rules in case you've always wanted an excuse to hit your friends. Every time that you see, I think it's a VW bug go by, you yell Punch Buggy and you punch your friend in the shoulder. I think the shoulder part's very important. right? Nowhere higher than the shoulder. Of course, once you're introduced to the game of Punch Buggy, what do you start seeing all the time? You start seeing VW bugs. You never used to see them all the time, but now they're omnipresent. They're everywhere. Or think about your first car. Whatever kind of car it was, I'll bet that the day you start driving that car, you now start to see other cars just like yours. You go, hey, look, there's another Accord, or there's a Civic. Oh, look, there's like a really janky Pinto. I didn't know anybody had those, right? I thought it was only me. We see them all the time. There's a part of our brain called the reticular activating system, which helps our cognitive ease. The things that we've been exposed to, it becomes really easy to notice over and over again. This isn't just for fun games that we can use as an excuse to punch our friends. This also has to do with our habits of mind. Consider Mondays and their reputation. If we think that Mondays are the worst and we dread them, well then when we wake up a little bit late, of course we would wake up late and miss our alarm. It's a Monday. Or when we realize that there's not much toothpaste left for us, oh, of course it's a Monday. Or we go out and we get stuck in traffic. Figures, classic Mondays. It reinforces the idea that Mondays are the worst. But what if we had a different narrative about Mondays? What if we didn't start off with that presupposition that Mondays were the worst? Maybe we miss our alarm and we think, oh, nice, I got to sleep in at least a little bit more than usual. Or we start running out of our toothpaste and we think, oh, finally, I can switch it out to some new toothpaste. I got this other one I've been waiting to try. Or we get stuck in traffic and we think, I've always needed an excuse to finish this podcast or to start this audiobook. It's kind of a nice time. I'm stuck in traffic anyway. I may as well put it on. It's the exact same experience. Waking up late, running out of toothpaste, getting stuck in traffic. But the narrative is different based on the thoughts that we reinforce more regularly. I'm kind of giving us some abstract examples here in life, but I think one of the best ways I've heard this put came from the American philosopher Will Durant. Will Durant said that we are what we repeatedly do. Excellence, then, is not an act, but a habit. We are what we repeatedly do. That's kind of a fascinating thought, because it really begs the question, what are we repeatedly doing? Am I looking for things to complain about? Am I gossiping all the time? Am I complimenting all the time? Am I appreciating all the time? What are the things that my mind is kind of naturally defaulting to doing? Because over time, that's going to become me. Marcus Aurelius said that the soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts. So, what are our thoughts? If nothing else, just being aware of the kinds of things we're doing all the time will be a useful exercise if you forget everything else that we talk about today. So if the first trick of our mind is cognitive ease, the first tool I want to give you is going to be designed to spot what your minds are doing all the time. It's kind of a group of tools that I like to call weight training. Weight training is not necessarily about strengthening your biceps or your pecs and lifting weights. Weight here is going to stand for something especially tangible for us. In particular, weight training is going to be all about what am I thinking? What am I thinking training? Just getting used to spotting what our minds are doing is going to be a valuable exercise unto itself. Now, there are all different kinds of ways to do this. Probably one of the most popular and effective ways is with mindfulness meditation. Do we have any meditators in the room? A show of hands. Any of us here that are meditators? Oh, we do. Right on. Very cool. Probably one of the most powerful things you can do. In fact, mindfulness meditation over the course of about a month or two has even been shown under fMRI scans to actually lessen the amount of gray matter that we have in our amygdalas, our emotional fear centers. You become less biologically attuned to experiencing nervousness and anxiety. That's pretty cool for a trick that's free. Not too shabby. But I'll admit, whoa, we got a lot of us in here. Chris, Malia, Tiffany, right on, thank you. It's a bit of a hard sell if I made this about meditation, because those that are doing it are going to be doing it, and those that have never tried it are going to go, I don't got time for that. I'm not going to do it. Fair enough. There are other ways to practice forms of weight training. The speaker and author Will Bowen suggests trying out a little complaint bracelet. You wear a little bracelet on one hand. Whenever you catch yourself complaining, you take it off, you put it on the other wrist. Just to be aware of it. You don't have to judge it. But you start noticing whenever the complaints automatically blurt out of ourselves. It becomes nice to spot the complaints. One way that I like to give a strategy for us is to just notice the thoughts every once in a while is to have some kind of outside thing pose the question to you, what am I thinking? For example, this ring right here could be my weight. And the way I would treat it as a weight is I would take the ring off and I'd put it on the wrong finger. You ever wore a ring on the wrong finger? Feels weird, doesn't it? I was kind of aware of it. It feels oogie. And every time you become aware of it, what am I thinking? Maybe I'm complaining, maybe I'm ruminating, maybe I'm appreciating. Who knows? But I go, oh, look at that. Worry. Or, oh, look at that. Chores. Or, oh, look at that. Contentment. But you just notice it. Now, if you don't have a ring, that's okay. All sorts of things can be your weight. If you wear a watch normally faces outside, spin it around so it faces the inside. Whenever you feel it, ooh, what am I thinking? You wear a necklace on the outside of your shirt, put it on the inside every time you feel it against your chest. Oh, what am I thinking? Maybe you're stuck at home, so you're not getting fully dressed all the time. That's okay. Take some Post-its, and you can write weight on them, and you post them on door frames at about eye level. Whenever you change rooms, you can't help but stop and think, what am I thinking? And what we'll often notice is that we're doing some time traveling. We're going to be worrying about something coming up in the future, or we're going to be ruminating on something stressful from the past. But very rarely are we in the moment. And one of the nice revelations from weight training is that we can start to ask ourselves, do I have a problem right now? Well, very rarely do we actually have a problem right now, this moment. So there's something we can try out, just a little bit at home. It takes no money whatsoever and very, very little effort. A little bit of weight training. Meditating is fantastic, a complaint bracelet is great, but even something really simple like changing what you wear a little bit, just to notice, can get you started. Now, as you start getting used to the kinds of thoughts you have, noticing our minds wandering, seeing what we repeatedly do, you might notice a common theme. And the meditators in the room are probably going to be able to attest to this as well. This common theme will be the second trick of our mind. This second trick of your mind that you might start to notice, these are called should statements. A should statement is one of the most common kinds of thoughts and forms of default self-talk that we have, which drives our frustrations and irritations toward others, or guilt and anxiety towards ourselves. For example, driving around, somebody cuts you off. That person should have used their signal. Or getting ready for a presentation and I blank out. And I think, I should have practiced more. And so I feel bad that I didn't practice more. Or I feel mad at the driver because they didn't use their signal. The way a should statement works is that we have an idea for the way things ought to be. And then, when something isn't that way, we get so mad. We get mad when something outside of ourselves doesn't hold up to our expectation. And we tend to feel guilt and shame when we don't fulfill our own should statements. There's always an unspoken should behind our frustrations. The kid should stop crying, or the assignment should be shorter than it is, or my Wi-Fi should be more stable than it is. There's always these little standards that we have that we want to impose upon the world. But the thing about should statements, this is what the psychologist David Burns points out in his book Feeling Good. It's kind of the go-to book for what's called cognitive behavioral therapy for a lay audience. What Burns points out is that whenever we have a should statement, it means that there's a mismatch between our expectations and reality. And by definition, our expectations were unrealistic. Right? Because whatever happens in reality is the most realistic. It happened. It's real. Our expectations are not realistic. So the problem isn't with the world. The problem is with our expectations. At least when it comes to our emotions. That doesn't mean that we should just tolerate, there's a world of bad drivers, we shouldn't try to fix anything. No, of course we should try to, improve our drivers. We should try to improve our Wi-Fis and things. However, the experience of being frustrated is different. And it's not always necessarily helpful. In fact, being angry about something can inhibit our ability to get down to work and to finish this assignment, or to talk to our friend who is an erratic driver. Because if we can remove the frustration, then we can focus more on the problem. There's a little parable that's called the second arrow. If you're walking down the street and if you're walking down the street and you get hit by an arrow, that hurts, right? If you get hit by a second arrow, that hurts even more. The first arrow is whatever the problem is, whatever the issue is. The driver cuts you off on the road. The second arrow is our own rumination and anger and frustration that comes about. So we suffer twice. Once from the actual thing, and secondly because of ourselves. But the second part has to do with our self-talk. We suffer more in imagination than in reality, was what Seneca said. Well, we don't necessarily have to stab ourselves with the second arrow. Catching our should statements is a wonderful way out to prevent ourselves from stabbing ourselves with the second arrow. We'll still have some frustration a little bit, naturally. There's some inconvenience to having someone cut us off. We have to hit the brake a little bit, but that's not inherently an emotional issue. We could make it an emotional issue, but we don't have to if we don't want to. Now, what is it? I think I'm citing like philosophers and stuff, but Homer Simpson said something like, stop blaming yourself, blame yourself once and move on. Right? So even our cartoons have kind of a sense of second arrows for us. So that's the second trick of our minds, is the should statements. You'll start to notice these more as you practice weight training, whether it's through meditation or through wearing a physical weight like a ring or a complaint bracelet. So what do we do about our should statements? They're going to happen, and we don't want to get frustrated at them. We don't want to have thoughts like, I shouldn't have should statements, which is now getting really meta and second arrows for second arrows. So what can we do? Well, whenever we start spotting them, we can can them. We can can the shoulds. Here's what I mean by canning the shoulds. It's not necessarily the case that something ought to be a certain way, but there is a way that things can be. It can be the case that I practice more for my presentations. Fabulous. It's not necessarily the case that I should have practiced a bit more, whatever should have means. That's my own imposition on things. Or it's not necessarily the case that, I don't know, my brother or sister should be quieter when I'm trying to write an essay. But they can be quieter. How could they be? We could change just the language of it in our minds as we start to be aware of these things. One of the methods that we can start to can them is to use a little phrase. A little phrase is, it would be nice if. It would be nice if drivers all use their turn signals. It would be nice if I set aside more time to practice. It would be nice if my brother or sister weren't so noisy. Because it's true, it would be nice. Things can be that way, but they weren't that way. Oh well. So now we just have the first arrow. That's okay. We can survive a first arrow. Now, we probably want to use this more as self-talk, right? One time when I was giving this workshop, somebody asked, like, oh, so is that what I say now? Like, it would be nice if you took out the trash, which could start to become a little passive-aggressive, I think, if we deliver that line to other people. Like, it would be nice if you quieted down while I'm trying to write this essay, right? But this isn't designed, like, to try to make other people do things that we want them to do, right? This is about how we deal with the second arrow ourselves, how we deal with our own should statements. Because if we can start to extinguish that extra fire and furnace in our brains and our emotions, then we can more readily talk to our brothers and sisters making noise or things like that. So that's what we mean by canning the shoulds. We can flip them from, here's how a thing ought to be, to it would be nice if things were that way. Now, these are the first two tricks for starting to be aware of and shaping our self-talk. The third trick is the one I want to spend the most time on, because it's the one that I think might be the most scary. It's the kind of self-talk that becomes the most persistent over the course of our lives and might take a bit more time to start to deconstruct for the rest of our lives. It's still possible, but it's worth talking about probably for the rest of our workshop here today. Before I do, though, what kinds of questions, comments, thoughts, requests have we got? Maybe moments that you've spotted in yourself or little tricks. There are a lot more meditators in the room than I expected, so that's really cool. I think it was about half the room looking around when I try to remember. I'll try to keep an eye on chat just in case you got questions that come in there, because again, I don't want to leave you behind. We are getting closer to the more interactive portion, so if you haven't already, you can enable your cameras and kind of test them out and things. Remember, only I'll be able to see you as you see me. You won't be able to see each other till I bring you up on stage like we did with Malia a moment ago. You can test out your mics and stuff like that, because we are getting close to putting you front and center. Let's see. Scott says, when I'm training tutors, I sometimes give them the advice of don't should on yourself or others. Fabulous. I like that. Don't should on yourself. I like that. That's a good line. Fabulous. It's just polite too, really, I think. Yeah. Friends don't should on each other. I don't think so. No way. Fabulous. Good advice. All right. So as you're testing out cameras and microphones and things like that, let me kind of introduce you to the third big villain of our minds. The third big villain of our minds, I think, is probably best to introduce you by way of elephants. Elephants. There's a fairly controversial practice of elephant training. Rightly or wrongly, some elephant trainers, from the time an elephant is very young, will take a baby elephant, tie its leg to a little stake in the ground so that it doesn't run away. Right? And as the elephant grows up, of course, it's going to get bigger and stronger. So naturally, you'd have to change the rope and, to a stronger rope, change the stake in the ground to a stronger stake in the ground, naturally. Except they don't. The exact same rope and stake in the ground that holds the baby elephant in place holds the large elephant. And it's not because the rope is so strong or the stake is so strong. It's because as the elephant grows up, it learns that there's no use. As a baby elephant, it tugs and pulls as much as it wants to, and it makes no progress. So the elephant learns, can't do this. Now, we humans might look at the poor elephants and think, oh, that poor elephant, if only it were smarter. If it knew better, then it knows it could just walk away. It could snap the rope, it could rip the stake up out of the ground and be free. But weirdly, dumber animals are the ones that would get free. The elephant stays put because of its intelligence. It's a pattern recognizer. And because it spotted the pattern of useless pulling on the rope, all right, it stays put. Not because of the rope, but because of its idea of the rope. Can we think of other animals that might be more intelligent than elephants, that might be held in place by invisible barriers? Us. You bet. It's entirely possible that maybe one year you had kind of a so-so math class. Maybe the teacher didn't reach out and help you out very much. You didn't do very well and you think, I'm bad at math. That's just how I am. Well, that doesn't make any sense. Math doesn't care how good or bad you are. Math is math. If you follow the order of operations, you get the right answer. Or maybe we took a public speaking class one semester. We got really nervous and we blanked out. And we go, I'm just a bad speaker. Bad speaker. I mean, bad speaker. You talk all the time. You're a speaker all over the place. You talk to your friends, you talk to your family. You can do that. You can talk to people. You have the physical ability to do it. This phenomenon that the elephant teaches us, that possibly we might teach ourselves in old math classes or speech classes, is a phenomenon called learned helplessness. This is the third big villain of our minds that I think is worth spending the most time on. It's fascinating and tragic and amazing all at once. Learned helplessness is when we convince ourselves we are incapable of something we are perfectly capable to do. We convince ourselves we're incapable. We're not held in place by a rope, we're held in place by an invisible rope. I just can't give a speech, so naturally we don't prepare. Of course, preparing is exactly the kind of thing that would lead to a good result. I'm just bad at math, so naturally we don't put our full attention into the worksheets that we have, so we stay bad at math. But learned helplessness is in the mind. It has nothing to do with our actual capabilities. There is a kind of workaround for this that has to do with the way we absorb ourselves. One of the reasons that bright people are really good at procrastinating is because they're really good at absorbing themselves in the painful mental imagery of tasks. They feel the pain of filling out their taxes, and so they put it off. Right? They can absorb themselves in that. But we could just as easily absorb ourselves in other more productive, successful kinds of circumstances. Your self-talk works a little bit in verbal language, like that person shouldn't be a dum-dum on the road, but your brain's first language in self-talk is mental absorption, is kind of simulating experiences of what it's like to be giving a speech and to imagine the feeling of the nervousness or to imagine the feeling of the confidence, to feel your mouth salivating as you think about the buffet coming up. To absorb ourselves is the real language of our self-talk. So if this is the third big villain of our minds, I should give you a third trick for this, and it's taking advantage of the way your mind already likes to work. This is mental simulation. This is the first language of your self-talk. Mental simulation is when we absorb ourselves in an idea, a circumstance. In fact, you could even run mental practices of the way you would like to be, and you'd be amazed at the results. I'm speaking a bit in abstract here. There was a meta-analysis, an analysis of studies, which examined the results of 3,000 participants who did nothing but mental practice to see how well mental practice worked compared to physical practice. Like if you're going to play the saxophone. Of course, you'd think playing the actual saxophone would be better than just thinking about playing the saxophone. Except, for many saxophone players, thinking about playing yielded the same results as physically playing. It's largely a cognitive exercise. Which hands touch which notes at what time? In fact, what the meta-analysis found was that mental practice yielded around 2/3 the benefit of physical practice. That's amazing. I wonder, how much progress and success are we leaving on the table by not mentally practicing things? Now, in fairness, this works best for cognitive tasks. The more mentally involved the task is, like playing an instrument or giving a speech, the better mental practice is. For more physical tasks, you do need to get out there and physically practice. You're not going to become an Olympic acrobat by closing your eyes and thinking about it. You got to hit the mat. But so many of our tasks in a world ruled by knowledge work with no clear boundaries are mental tasks. When we think about running through math exercises or staying productive and on task or being more confident as a presenter, whatever the thing is that we have to work on, chances are there is a huge mental component. And we can absorb ourselves in the best version of what it feels like and looks like to do this. Now, earlier, when I start throwing around things like weight training with a puppy dog, and I say things like can, the shoulds, those are kind of catchy. People kind of hang on to those and remember them. People might start to kind of have a harder time when I talk about this, when I talk about mental practice. This also has another nickname. Oh, I think I have a question here. Malia, yeah, do we have a question there, Malia?
Nope, I'm sorry.
Oh, no problem. It's a hot mic, no problem. But thank you for testing out the mic. I did ask all of us to do that because we are going to be jumping into very interactive portions here. I'm on the road, really have to hear what it's seeming driving. Okay, thanks there, Malia in chat. Anyway, this has a little nickname. Mental simulation, mental practice might sound like a chore. What? I have to practice even in my head? But this also has another nickname outside of academia. Self-hypnosis. Now, let's be real for a moment here. Hypnosis is not mind control. It's not like loopy, swirly eyes swinging a pocket watch, like where you make people do things. It's not mind control. If that's the case, then psychologists and professors who practice hypnosis could just walk into Amazon headquarters and be like, this is mine now. And they would right? But it doesn't work like that. Self-hypnosis is mentally absorbing ourselves into an experience, whether that experience is being our most confident selves, or maybe being nervous, or maybe being irritated. As we have cognitive ease, as we repeat maybe more negative things, we kind of hypnotize ourselves to be negative all the time, to spot those things and reinforce them in the world. And everybody has the capacity to do this. You don't have to be like dumb or easily controllable to use self-hypnosis. In fact, it's kind of the opposite. The more you can focus your attention, the better you're going to be at this. If you can tune out Netflix for a while and just focus in on chemistry for a couple hours, that's really amazing. And that skill can be used to absorb yourself, to kind of hypnotize yourself for all different kinds of things that you want. By default, there's a kind of bell curve. Most of us are very good mental simulators, or pretty average mental simulators, most of us, around 70% of us. But there are some of us on the very tail ends here, around 10 to 15% of us, that are extremely good mental simulators. The kinds of simulators that, as they're watching a video of a skateboarder that like messes up and like hurts himself on a railing, they go, ooh, and they physically feel the pain themselves watching the video. Like, that's kind of impressive. How do you physically feel pain from doing nothing in particular? It's because we've absorbed ourselves in experience. Think about it like this. If we had a challenge for you, if I laid out on the ground like a 2x4, kind of a long block of wood, 2x4. Show of hands. How many of us could walk across it? Yeah, like kind of like walking on the curb. Could you walk across the 2x4 balancing? Okay, quite a few hands there. It's possible. Like if you were going to win some money, could you definitely do it? You probably could. Like, oh, give me $1? All right. Give me $1 million, of course. Like you could absolutely do that. Okay. Take the exact same 2x4, but we suspend it from the rooftops of 2 skyscrapers. Show of hands. Who's walking across the 2x4? I'm not seeing as many hands. Oh, I see an ooh emoji face. Good expression there, Chris. That makes sense. Oh, I see a thumbs down very decisively. That's strange because the challenge is identical. Walk across a 2x4 versus walk across a 2x4. The difference is in our minds. Assuming there's no wind. Let's assume there's no wind. But it's a mental difference. We have the mental simulation of wobbly legs, of falling to our doom, and so naturally, maybe we get sweatier palms, we get weaker knees. People will fall with the idea of the 2x4 being up high. But it's the same experience as just walking along a curb like you've done since you were a kid. Just walking in a straight line. You could walk in a straight line. This is the way learned helplessness works. It changes our mental simulation. We can change our mental simulation too, and we can do it on purpose by absorbing ourselves in immersive experiences. And so what I thought I'd do is we could try some exercises in mental simulation here. So now's the time with your cameras and to have your mics at the ready and things like that. And I can tell you a few things at the outset. I know I was dropping like the H word hypnosis earlier, but I can make you a couple of promises right up front. First thing is I promise nobody's going to get embarrassed by this. This is not like where people are going to be barking like a dog or clucking like a chicken, nothing like that. These are just little exercises you can try at home just to kind of see what the experience is like. Secondly, you don't have to do these if you don't want to. It's totally voluntary, but you'll see how benign and approachable they are. Okay, so to try this out, first of all, we got our cameras, we got our mics, perfect. And if you don't see other people's cameras, remember, focus mode means that only I see you and you see me. Right. So if it looks like you're the only one with your camera on, don't worry. I still see other people's cameras on. Hey, there's Sherry. Good to see you. Hey, there's Chris. Good to see you. Good to see you, Chanel. Okay. So if you want to try this out, I'm going to ask you not to look at me for a moment, but to look at a spot on the wall. I'll let you know when to look back at me. Look at a spot on the wall there. And you can kind of unclasp your hands. You can uncross your legs, sitting kind of comfortably and relaxed there in your chair. Fabulous. Wonderfully done. I'm going to have you imagine that about halfway between you and the spot you're looking at is a big, juicy lemon. Big juicy lemon floating there in the sky. Imagine what it looks like to have it cut in half. All that juice starts to drip down. This is a juicy lemon. One half floats towards your face. And as it reaches your face, imagine what it would feel like to take a bite into that raw lemon. You can feel the pulp and the juice go flooding around your teeth and your gums. And it is a sour lemon, even more than it looked. You take another big bite, more juice goes flooding through your gums and your teeth. It's so sour, why did I do this? And we can get rid of the lemon. You can look on back to the screen here, and you can come on back to us. Show of hands. How many of you realize that your mouth is producing more saliva? Ooh, it's pretty unanimous. I see hands, I see laughing emoji faces. Perfect. What is that? How'd you do that? I see a smiley face there, Pearl. Thanks for joining us. Yeah, like, how'd you do that? That's a mental experience. It's a kind of self-hypnosis, if you like. We are absorbing ourselves in a mental experience, and our bodies follow along as a natural byproduct. You couldn't fake that if you wanted to. If you sat there and you're like, salivate now, like, it's not going to work, right? But if we lose ourselves in a mental experience, just as a byproduct, it's like Morpheus said in The Matrix, the mind makes it real. The mind makes all kinds of things real. Could be the nervousness and wobbliness of our knees, we're imagining the 2x4. It could be the nervousness, the tightness in our chest before a speech. Or it could be even physical and arbitrary, like more saliva. That worked out pretty well. I'm actually kind of impressed at how many hands and stuff we saw here, which suggests to me, I think in the room, we might have some people, statistically, let's say looking at the number of people we have in this room, I would expect around maybe 1 or 2 people to be like really good mental simulators, which means we can probably try some other things. Want to try some more? We can try it out. Yeah, fabulous. Okay. And again, not going to embarrass nobody, and you don't have to do this if you don't want to. If you want to try this one out, a little bit more intense, I want to try to look more now for like that 10%, the people really on the tail end of the bell curve. So if these things don't work for you, don't worry, it doesn't make you a bad person. I'm going to start swinging for the fences here. You can take your hands out in front of you just like this. Fabulous, wonderfully done. And you can turn them face up just like this. Fabulous, wonderfully done. And for a moment, just imagine that I reach through the screen and I drop into your right hand a little clear capsule. Boom, right there onto your palm. A little clear capsule onto your right hand. That capsule is filled with a powerful super glue. Now you can take your left hand and clasp it over top of your right hand. Imagine what it would be like to feel that capsule resting between your hands. And now for a moment, go ahead and look at one spot on your hands. Don't look at me. Find one comfortable spot to look at. And you can start to squeeze, tight, 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 squeezing down, tighter, locking, fusing those fingers together. I'm going to count backwards from 3 to 1 as you continue to squeeze, looking at that spot on your hand. feeling that tightness. And as I count backwards from 3 to 1, at some point, I want you to imagine you would feel that capsule burst, and you would feel the glue oozing, sticking, locking, fusing those hands together so that they would stay stuck tight with that glue, locking them in place. Counting backwards, squeezing tightly, squeezing the palms, the fingertips, locking down the wrists. You can feel that tightness down to the elbow. Starting off with 3, squeezing, squeezing, squeezing. Seeing the whiteness of the fingertips there as those hands squeeze. You can feel the warmth of that capsule in your hands as the chemical reaction starts to begin. Down to 2, squeezing, locking, fusing tightly. If it hasn't happened already, you can feel that capsule burst. You can feel the oozing of the gooey superglue all around the insides of your palms, oozing out any tiny little holes in your fingers, oozing around the outsides, locking your palms, locking the fingertips to the outsides, starting to cure and to harden and to lock and to fuse, all the way down to 1, locking, oozing, fusing. You can feel the chemicals causing the tightness down into the wrists, down the forearms as they lock stuck tight. In fact, they would fuse and lock so tight that those hands wouldn't even pull apart if you tried to pull them apart, because that's how strong the glue is. In fact, if you give them a little wiggle just to test it, notice that strength for yourself. Genuinely give a little wiggle there as you notice that. In fact, if you gave a try, notice that the more you try, the more that glue sticks those hands together, so they wouldn't even pull apart. Go ahead, try to pull them apart. Notice how the glue sticks them even more as you try, and they genuinely stick to each other. Don't play along. Try to genuinely pull your hands apart and notice how they stick. Notice that sticking, locking, fusing stuck tight. If your hands are genuinely stuck right now, could you wave your hands around on camera so we can see you? I don't want anyone here like playing along or something. If your hands are genuinely stuck, you can show us there. That is the strangest thing. Notice that fusing, locking all the time as it continues to just lock itself down there. Let's see here. We've got, yeah. I think, real quick, I think I see someone here. Can you wave around? Your hands are genuine. You can nod your head, shake your head. You're really stuck? What happens when you try to pull them apart? What happens? I think we're muted here. That's right, we're muted. I'm stuck. We'll come back to you. We'll come back to you. Keep on. Let's see. Chris, I see. Genuinely stuck? Wiggle them around. You're not just like playing along? Did I like approach you before this seminar and I was like, just play along, just act like they're stuck? No, it's genuinely stuck? I'm sorry about that. That is a very strange experience. For everyone at home, even if I can't see you, if your hands are stuck together, I'm going to count backwards from 3 to 1, and that glue will melt. You can get full control of your hands. 3, 2, and 1. Unfusing, locking, sticking, getting that feeling sensation coming back in, the blood flow returning to the fingertips. Just notice how it starts to kind of come back there. That is the strangest thing. I think, oh, maybe I didn't see it. Chanel, did that happen to you as well? Was it stuck? Wow. I think there were a few people that just came on camera. Tiffany in chat there. I didn't see you, but yeah, that was trippy. It happened to you too. It's the strangest thing here. I think it was the first person I talked to was Malia, but you were a bit stuck at the moment. What did that feel like, Malia? You can jump on mic with us.
I don't know. I couldn't pull. It was just so hot and I couldn't pull my hands apart.
Couldn't pull your hands apart. And you weren't like just...
No,
it's not like...
just like it. I don't know if it was because I was already focusing on trying to squeeze my hand. I have no idea why it did that, but I was trying to pull it apart and it wouldn't come apart.
Wouldn't pull apart. Genuinely. That is the strangest thing. Chris, I think it looks like we got you on mic now. Chris, what was that like for you?
I feel like my brain got hijacked at first, but then my hands did too.
Oh, cool. The brain got hijacked, and then your hands got... So it's like you weren't even controlling your hands. They were doing their own thing.
I was thinking that's what you're thinking you're doing, right? So it's like, follow along. Then pretty soon, wait, but I cannot undo it.
Right. It's like you start off kind of following along, but by the end, you're not like just playing along, like acting like they're stuck. They're stuck on their own. Have you ever felt something like that before, Chris?
Actually, yeah, I've had that kind of experience before, so...
Interesting, you have. Very cool. Well, thank you for jumping on mic. Thanks there, Molly. And there are a few of us there in chat, but just for time's sake, you can jump into chat for the rest of us. If I didn't get a chance to see you there, let me know what that was like. This experience is a little small-scale sample of mental simulation. What's sticking the hands together? Nothing. Of course not. There's no glue, there's no tape, right? There's no cash reward for playing along and acting like it, right? But it's kind of like the lemons. The mind makes it real. It's kind of like our wobbly knees if the 2x4 is up on a skyscraper. We create our invisible ropes for ourselves. But in the same way that we can have our hands stuck, what you saw here is not limited to this little session where I have to say things to you. No, no, no. How many of us have ever felt like we woke up in the morning and we were stuck to our beds? We just couldn't get out of bed. We're just so lazy and slothful, we just can't do it. Yeah, we felt it before. It's weird. No, of course we can. We can get out of bed. We have the physical ability to, but then we just can't. And if our mind thinks we can't, we may as well can't. We also get stuck in sort of figurative ways. This is a literal sticking, but it's only literal so I can show you what's going on in other spheres of our life too. Maybe we feel stuck because we can't get started on our essay. We're stuck because we can't choose a speech topic, or we can't stand up to walk up in front to start our presentation, or we can't ask out the cute barista that we've been chatting with, right? We just can't do these things. But of course we can in a way. So what if we change the mental simulation? What if we were stuck to things that were valuable for us? Sticking to a good habit, sticking to an exercise regimen, or sticking to a diet regimen or something. We all probably know other people who somehow are so lucky, they're so good, that they journal every day. Oh, this person makes their bed every day, or this person always starts their assignments super early. How do they do that? They're just responsible. They're just born as like an effective person. It's not a character trait. It's a mental simulation. We've been running different simulations than they have been running them. Here in this room, we were able to find some really good simulators, which means that they were practicing this outside somewhere, somehow. This is not a skill limited to just the people that had their hands stuck together. It just, if you had your hands stuck together, it means that you've been practicing this elsewhere. I don't know how. Maybe you get really into novels, or maybe you get really into meditation, or maybe it's when you pray every day, or whatever your exercise regimen. You have other ways of deliberately shaping your mental experience. The rest of us can do this too. We felt the salivation with the lemons. We felt the nervousness with the idea of the raised 2x4. It's the same experience. Doing it on command just means we can practice it a little bit more. What kinds of questions, comments, thoughts, requests have we got about any of this stuff? If you are wondering, absolutely other people are wondering too. Yeah. I'll give us some time to type there in chat in case we got to think of some stuff. But self-talk is a pretty large, robust field. It can be kind of surface level and verbal, like specific phrases we say to ourselves, like I can do this, or canning the shoulds, right? It would be nice if. But our mind's first language is not language, it's experience. And we can speak experience too with mental simulation. So hopefully, at whatever stage of stressors or utility any of these things might be playing a role for in your life, however work is intermingling with personal life, hopefully we can get something tangible out of this. If nothing else, we can practice a little bit of weight training. We can spot the things that our minds are doing. It could be as intense as a meditation routine. It could be as lightweight as little post-its that say wait, or little rings in the wrong place that remind you to ask, what am I thinking? As we practice that, we can start noticing the should statements, our expectations that are technically unrealistic, and we can can them. We can remember, it would be nice if something were a certain way. And finally, probably the deepest level, speaking the first language of our minds, is mental simulation. By default, we may have some learned helplessness. You might have your own invisible ropes in places I'm not aware of. What if they were invisible rocket boosters? What if instead of being stuck in ways that you can't do things, you were stuck to things that were productive and helpful? You probably know other people who are, because they're already running mental simulations. You can practice this yourself too. Great quote there, Chris. Whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right, Henry Ford said. Fabulous. Absolutely. Yep. And these aren't just little kind of lightweight platitudes designed to kind of keep us motivated. These are tangible experiences that we can witness, that research is starting to catch up with, like research looking into mental simulation. As we examine our intrapersonal skills, we can see the effects for ourselves or taste them in our mouths. You can see too how these things have real tangible effects, even in a short term. So just imagine what effective self-talk could do in the long term. Thank you all so much for coming out. I know there's a lot of places we could have been, so thank you so much for being here, and thank you to our volunteers. We can give them some love. All of our powerful mental simulators in the room. Nicely done. Yep. I think we've got for you, we've got like a little like evaluation form that Tasha's got for us in chat. So do feel free to leave some thoughts for us in there. Or feel free to stick around if you have further questions. I'm happy to talk shop, whatever you'd like to chat about. Thanks so much, everybody.